Jack Lawson was tired. The sun beat down on the dry plains, and his horse, a lean chestnut named Dusty, was just as worn out as he was. Jack had never liked the heat of the frontier, but it was the only life he knew now. He had once been a rancher, living on his father's land, a place where the sky seemed bigger and the air cleaner. But that was before the storm that had taken everything away from him. It had been months since the cattle raid, the one that had driven Jack out of his home. His ranch, his livelihood, his dreams, all gone in a single night. The people he had trusted betrayed him, and the law couldn't help. So now Jack wandered from one place to the next, a drifter without a clear purpose. The wind whistled through the dry grass, and Dusty's hooves kicked up small clouds of dust. Jack was almost out of water, and his stomach growled. He could see a few mountains in the distance, but that was about all the hope he had left. Just as he thought about stopping for a break, something caught his eye. A sign. It wasn't much to look at. Just a wooden post weathered by time and sun, but what was written on it made him slow down. In faded letters it said, "The whites call it the Circle of Lost Souls." The words sent a strange shiver down Jack's spine, but he didn't know why. It didn't make sense. Who would name a place like that? Curiosity tugged at him. He had no real destination anyway, so he decided to follow the trail ahead. Maybe it would lead to water or shelter, something, anything. As he made his way forward, he passed through some twisted, gnarled trees. It felt like something was watching him, but Jack was used to the wild. It wasn't the first time he'd felt the eyes of nature on him. Then, as he rounded a bend, Jack heard a sound. It was faint at first, but as he got closer, he could hear it clearly. A cry. It was low, almost like a moan of pain. His heart picked up speed. Was it an animal? Or worse, another person in trouble? Without thinking, he urged Dusty forward, his instincts kicking in. The cry grew louder, and soon Jack saw the source. A woman, her back against a tree, her hands tied tightly to its trunk with rough rope. Her body was slumped, and her face was dirty and scratched, but Jack could see she was still breathing. And something in her eyes, even in her weakened state, caught him off guard. They were sharp, defiant, and full of anger. The woman was Native American, and from the looks of it, she had been left there to die. Jack felt a strong pull of sympathy, but at the same time a fear gripped him. What was she doing here? Why had they left her like this? He hesitated. He had heard stories about the Seminole and other tribes in the area. Some said they were hostile. Others claimed they were peaceful. The truth, like so many things in this world, was probably somewhere in between. But no matter the tribe, Jack knew one thing. A person in need of help was a person worth saving. He quickly dismounted and approached the woman. "You all right?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Her eyes snapped open, and for a moment Jack thought she might try to fight him. But then she saw the look in his eyes. There was no trickery, no hidden agenda. Just a man trying to help. "I'm fine," she muttered, her voice hoarse. "But you should leave. You won't last long out here." "No one does," Jack frowned. "I'm not going anywhere until I get you out of here." He pulled out his knife and started cutting through the rough rope. The woman didn't resist, but her eyes never left him. There was a wariness in them, like she was trying to figure him out. Once the rope was cut, she slumped to the ground, exhausted. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice full of gratitude, though her expression remained guarded. Jack nodded, but he didn't leave. "What's your name?" "Kaya," she replied after a long pause, her voice still weak but steady. Jack helped her sit up against the tree, and Dusty, sensing the tension, lowered his head, as if giving them some space. Kaya looked at him for a moment before speaking again. "I'm not the woman you think I am," she said softly. "I'm no friend of the settlers, and I don't trust anyone who works with them." Jack raised an eyebrow. "I'm not a settler, just a cowboy." She glanced up at him with suspicion. "A cowboy? What does that even mean anymore? You all come to take our land, or you come to get paid by those who took it already. It doesn't matter." Jack stood up, feeling a sense of unease. She was clearly not the type to trust easily. And yet, there was something in her voice that made him want to listen. He had nothing left to lose, and maybe, just maybe, he could help her, and she could help him in ways he couldn't yet understand. "What happened?" he asked. She paused, looking down at her hands. "My tribe. I was cast out. For standing against them. Against the ones who sold their souls to the white man in exchange for power." Jack didn't understand, but he knew enough to sense the bitterness in her voice. "So you're on your own now?" She nodded slowly. The outcasts are always alone. Jack wasn't sure how to respond to that. He was alone too in his own way. After all, he had lost everything once, and now he was a man without a place to call home. "I'll help you," he said finally. "I can't promise anything, but I won't leave you like this." Kaya looked up at him, her eyes softening just a little. Why? Jack thought about that question for a moment. He wasn't sure. Maybe it was because she reminded him of himself. Maybe it was because he couldn't ignore the feeling that he had a chance to do something right for once. Or maybe, just maybe, he saw something in her that he couldn't quite explain. A strength he could respect. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I just know it's the right thing to do." The woman seemed to accept this, though she still kept her guard up. She was a warrior, after all. But for the first time since they met, she allowed herself to close her eyes for a moment, resting. Jack took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. He had a feeling that whatever was coming next, it would change both of their lives forever. The world out here was unforgiving, but sometimes you had to take risks to find the truth. As Jack mounted, Dusty and Kaya stood up to follow. They both knew one thing. They were no longer alone. The days passed slowly, and Jack and Kaya continued their journey through the harsh wilderness. Each day brought new challenges, burning heat during the day, bone-chilling cold at night, and the constant worry of being followed. Despite their differences, Jack and Kaya formed a bond that neither of them had expected. They shared their food, their water, and their stories. Jack, a cowboy used to working alone, had never known such a companion. Kaya, a woman cast out by her own people, had learned to trust no one, but somehow, the two of them made it work. As they traveled, Kaya would tell Jack about her life before she had been cast out. She had once been a proud member of the Seminole tribe, trained in the ways of war and honor. But when the tribe's leaders began to cooperate with the settlers, Kaya had stood up against them. She couldn't understand how her people could betray their ancestors in exchange for power. The division had torn the tribe apart, and Kaya had become an outcast, rejected by both the settlers and her own people. Jack listened carefully. He had never understood the complexities of Native American life, but he could feel the pain in her words. He didn't know how much help he could be, but he had no intention of leaving her side. He knew the world wasn't fair, and in this land of broken dreams, maybe it was enough to just fight for the right thing, no matter how small that fight might seem. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the barren land, Kaya stopped and pointed to the distance. "There," she said, her voice low but firm. "That's where we need to go." Jack followed her gaze. In the distance, hidden among a grove of trees, was a small settlement. It wasn't much, just a handful of wooden buildings, but it had a certain feel to it. Something about it made Jack uneasy. He didn't know what to expect, but he could tell this wasn't just another place to pass through. "This is where my people are," Kaya said, her voice filled with a strange mixture of hope and sadness. "The circle of lost souls. They are the outcasts, the ones who didn't want to follow the settlers' ways. They have nowhere else to go." Jack frowned. "Are they dangerous?" Kaya shook her head. "Not dangerous to you, but they are the ones who understand what I'm trying to do. They fight for freedom, even if it means being left behind by the world." Jack was quiet for a moment. He wasn't sure what to think. He had heard stories about the Seminole, but he had never met anyone like Kaya before. She was different from the other Native Americans he had encountered. There was something in her spirit, something that made Jack want to fight by her side. He had no clear idea what he was getting into, but he knew that staying with Kaya felt like the right choice. Together, they approached the settlement cautiously, keeping to the shadows as much as possible. The air was thick with tension, and the feeling of being watched never left Jack. As they neared the first building, they were stopped by an old woman sitting on a log, watching them with sharp eyes. Her face was weathered like leather, but her gaze was intense, full of both wisdom and warning. "What do you want here?" she asked, her voice rough but commanding. Kaya stepped forward, her shoulders straight, her eyes steady. "I'm Kaya," she said. "I've come to join the circle, to fight for my people." The old woman didn't blink. She studied Kaya for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You have the fire of a warrior in you. But be careful. The circle doesn't take kindly to weakness. You may have come looking for a place, but you might not find what you expect." Jack stood back, letting Kaya speak for herself. He didn't know how to make sense of everything that was happening, but he knew one thing. He would follow her wherever she went. She had shown him kindness when no one else had, and for that he owed her his loyalty. After a long pause, the old woman stood up. "Come with me," she said, her tone softer now. "I'll take you to Waya." Waya was the leader of the Circle of Lost Souls. The old woman led them through the settlement, passing small huts where people worked quietly, their faces serious. The settlement was a far cry from the bustling towns Jack was used to. It was a place of survival, where every day was a struggle, but it was also a place of strength. The people here had chosen to live apart from the world, to stand on their own and fight for what they believed in. They reached a small, central building where a woman stood waiting. Waya was older than Kaya, but just as fierce, with a presence that commanded respect. Her eyes were sharp and calculating, and her body was strong, like a tree that had weathered many storms. Kaya stepped forward, her voice steady. "I've come to join you. I want to fight for the Seminole, to take back what's ours." Waya studied Kaya for a long moment before nodding. "I knew you would come. You are the daughter of the Seminole, and your blood calls to you. But know this, there is no easy path here. The Circle of Lost Souls is not a place for the weak. We fight not just for survival, but for a future we can call our own." Kaya's heart burned with determination. "I'm ready. I've already lost everything once. I won't lose it again." Waya smiled faintly. "Then you are ready. Welcome to the Circle." Jack stood quietly by the door, unsure of his place in all of this. He wasn't Seminole. He wasn't even close to being a warrior. He was just a cowboy, a man who had nothing left but his strength and his will to survive. But as he looked at Kaya, standing tall among her people, he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in a long time. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something greater. Over the next few days, Jack and Kaya learned more about the Circle. The group was small but determined. They lived off the land using old traditions and skills that had been passed down through generations. They hunted, fished, and gathered food, but most of all, they trained. The Circle was preparing for something big, a rebellion not just against the settlers, but against the very forces that had torn their lives apart. Kaya trained with the other warriors, learning new ways to fight and defend herself. Jack, though not a warrior, helped where he could, repairing weapons, learning how to track, and doing his part to contribute to the Circle's survival. It wasn't easy. There were moments when he wondered if he was out of his depth, but every time he saw Kaya's determination, he knew he was doing the right thing. But as the days passed, Jack began to notice something unsettling. The settlers were getting closer. They had sent scouts into the area looking for signs of the Circle, and the Seminole, the ones who had chosen to cooperate with the settlers, were not far behind. The two forces were closing in on the Circle, and soon a battle would be inevitable. One night, as the stars shone above them, Waya gathered the group together. "The time has come," she said, her voice filled with quiet authority. "We will fight to protect our people, to protect our land. No more hiding. We will stand and fight together." Kaya stood tall, her eyes burning with the same fire Jack had seen before. "I'm ready," she said. "I won't let my people be taken from me again." Jack stood beside her, his hand resting on his rifle. He wasn't a warrior, but he would stand with her. Whatever happened, he knew that the fight they were about to face would change everything. And as the wind blew across the plain, Jack knew one thing for sure. The Circle of Lost Souls had found its strength. And they were ready to fight.